Americans were very busy abroad this weekend. MLS's season is in overdrive, and we update the NASL versus MLS antitrust trial. That and more on Monday's Morning Kickaround. A very big hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's favoriteest country. Coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Hope you all are well. It's Monday. Jason, how you coping?
Yes. Again, I will say we are the world's most tariffist-ing country. Is that? I still got to figure out the verb form of tariff. How does that work? Anyway, that's what we're doing.
Terraformed?
Happy Monday. But yeah, we're talking football, so I'm not going to worry too much about that.
Yeah. What you wearing there this morning? That's a nice looking shirt you got there.
Yeah, this is Motoric Alexandria. I live in this is a local team, very close to me. Picked up this shirt a couple years ago when they did a special from Icarus. You can see, got to get the right. See, there you go. The plastics, always anti-fascist. Yeah. So there's maybe a message today happening on my shirt. Let's continue, Rob.
I think everything could be allusion to the news. There's just so much ridiculous stuff going on in the news that anything could be an allusion to that. But moving on, did you know that we blasted past our 500 subscribers and we are marching on our way to 1,000 YouTube subscribers? If you haven't already clicked that subscribe button, do so. Morning Kickaround, it's 2 words. Don't get sucked into the workout machine advertising for Chuck Norris. Morning Kickaround, 2 words. Be sure to subscribe and tell all your friends about our show. Contact the show, write an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. Follow along on social media at @mkickaround. And I'm very excited to say we now have a Ko-Fi page. If you would like to financially support and assist the program, go to ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. You can donate $5 for a coffee or consider donating monthly. It will help get this show going. Help us become the American Soccer Town Center for the American Soccer conversation. Right, Jason?
That's what we want? We want to be a town center? What's in a town center, Rob? What do they have in a town center?
Where we sit down, have a coffee, and we chat and have conversations, and we're able to freely discuss the things we want to.
Okay, so like old guys playing chess, people feeding birds, a clown for some reason, or maybe a mime if you're in France. I don't know. That's the kind of thing that's in a town center.
Yeah.
Is there any stores? We're supporting local establishments, right? We're not going for the big box stores. We're local. We're town center people.
Yeah, there's an Icarus store there. There's a variety of others all surrounding it while we play dominoes and chat the football.
Ooh, dominoes. Oh, I could go on and on about dominoes being married to a Puerto Rican, but I will not do that today. Let's talk football. Let's talk soccer instead.
All right, let's get to our headlines. Let's kick Monday's long balls. Here we go. Long balls here for Monday, January 27th. Can you believe we're already kicking all the way through January? Americans were busy. Long ball number 1. Let's start on the continent of Europe and Captain America Christian Pulisic back in the goals. He started in a wild game, AC Milan versus Parma. It took a late 2-goal comeback to get the win for Milan to keep them in the hunt for 4th place. But it's great to see Christian Pulisic back in the goals. A very well taken penalty for Milan.
That man takes good penalties. Like if you have Christian Pulisic on your team, let the man take the penalties. Like stop with this thing where it's like, well maybe Tammy Abraham's going to. No, Christian Pulisic takes the penalties. Stop it already. I don't think he's ever missed. I think I saw the stat was he's never missed. And you're making a questioning face, a doubtful face, Mr.
No, I that was my thoughtful face trying to remember one. And I wear my emotions right on my face and on my sleeve. And that was me scrunching my brain, trying to think of a miss.
Okay.
And nothing comes to mind immediately.
No, you think it well. I mean, if it was a dramatic miss in a game that mattered, you remember it. And if it was a miss in a game that didn't matter, maybe it would slip your mind. But you can remember him scoring big penalties.
Oh, yeah.
You can.
More makes than misses come to mind for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and massive for Milan, because they were on the verge of dropping points against a team in Parma way down in 16th. They had no business dropping points to. And I don't know that things have gotten markedly better under Conceição as he has taken over.
It's much the same.
No, it is much the same, but at the same time, again, Pulisic had injury blip in there. They went and they won that Super Copa in Saudi Arabia when Christian was there on the field doing things, in which question whether or not that mattered, but it's a trophy. Conceição gets to put that on his plus column for the moment as they try to build this thing again. Kyle Walker is now coming in. He didn't play in this game. He was in the stands. But they've got something to look forward to, and they absolutely had to win this game. So Pulisic, Reinders, and Chukwueze score, again, those 2 goals in added time to win that game, as you mentioned, because otherwise they would have lost the match, not just picked up 3 points. They would have gotten 0 out of it.
It was kind of wild that they actually scored 3, but 1 was ruled out. So the last bit of injury time, absolutely bananas. And then the action spilled out over into the post game when Conceição, had to be separated from his defender that he had subbed out, Calabria. And I really like this quote that this wasn't a big deal. It was like a father reprimanding a son who misbehaves. True, it wasn't nice, but that's normal in football. I love this. We are not in church. So just
when you say we are not in church in Italy, that means something. Like that has some heft to it, some weight to it. So yeah, good. Look, this is another reason to start believing that Pulisic is in a different place in his career, right? That this is a new Pulisic that is not as fragile as he was at Chelsea. And even if he is out for a match or 2 or whatever, when he comes back, he can pick up where he left off. Now, this is a penalty kick. This is not quite the same as scoring a brilliant goal from open play. But I don't think I care. What I care about is that he's healthy. And if you look at his FOTMOB rating, 7.8, he went the full 90 minutes, right? He created some chances. He had a couple of good moments dribbling the ball. So, he still was Christian Pulisic, and it's not even really a big sigh of relief. It's a smaller one because he's teaching us I'm different now. I'm stronger. I'm ready to handle the rigors of a season in Europe again.
And it's not like Chelsea, when he gets injured, it takes a couple weeks for the manager to even consider putting him back in too. Big change there. And additional note, producer Jenny says transfer market has Pulisic 12 from 12 from the penalty spot. So good note there. Staying in Italy, Weston McKennie had a tough going at right back in Juventus's loss versus league-leading Napoli. Again, Weston McKennie getting tested all over the field, this time at right back. Kind of a tough result, but, Napoli, a top team. Any notes on that or move along?
Well, no, I mean, it's once again, I think we want to say that it'd be nice if Thiago Motta picked a spot for Weston McKennie and said, that's your spot. By the way, for Milan, we should also mention that Yunus Musa started that game and played in midfield for AC Milan and had an assist. He also had an error that led to a Parma goal. So he was kind of a little bit all over the map. But decent day for Yunus Musa. In terms of Juve, with the 2 Americans there, it'd be nice if Motta said, okay, Weston, you're my guy in this spot on the field, and you're going to play there, and that's just the way things are going to go. Clearly, he has more utility than that, or Motta sees him as sort of the Swiss Army knife when they need somebody to play in any given position. I'm kind of mad about it. I'm kind of angry about it because every time he plays, and maybe you could argue against the league leaders in Napoli, it was a tougher day out, and he didn't cover himself in glory. But again, how can you blame him when they are consistently moving him around the formation? No one can feel completely settled at Juve. They just added Randall Colomuani. He got the start up top, scored the goal for Juve, actually gave them the lead before Napoli found 2 goals to win the game. So they're working things out. It's January. They're adding pieces. But, man, it'd be nice if Weston McKennie could be a midfielder because I think that's where he's best utilized. High utility player, touches the ball a lot, does a lot of things, can play creatively, can pop up in the goal in the box and score goals. So Thiago Motta, please find a spot for Weston McKennie and let him play there. Let him stay in that position.
Going farther north, but staying on the European continent, Ricardo Pepi remains in great goal-scoring form, getting a late one for PSV, which turned out to be the winner versus Breda. And PSV plays Liverpool in the Champions League match day 8. So a chance to impress his possible future suitor.
Perhaps. I don't think Liverpool is the club he's going to end up with. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Since you're kind of alluding to that idea, it's the same thing. I'm going to express frustration again. And look, in the case of McKennie, I have more criticism for Thiago Motta about McKennie and yanking him around the formation than I do for Peter Bosz and what's happening at PSV Eindhoven, because Bosz still does have a proven goal scorer who is the club captain. And I can't be mad at Bosz for being honest and saying, look, I've got Luke de Jong, and as long as I got Luke de Jong, Ricardo Pepi is going to be a backup. I want the kid to play. Every time he steps on the field, he scores a goal, it seems like. But that doesn't mean he's going to jump over an established player like Luke de Jong. So I guess, again, what we're hoping for is that something happens in this window. Now, there's that trepidation of what is the best place. And I think we did a segment on what might be the best destination for Ricardo Pepi. And I can't tell you 100% that he should go here or there or some other place, because any place that he goes, he is going to be up against it in terms of playing time. Anywhere that he goes that is a level above the Eredivisie and playing for the best team in that league, which is what PSV Eindhoven is. If he goes to West Ham, if he goes to any club in that portion of the Premier League table, there is pressure, right? There's massive pressure to perform because it's the Premier League and because the fans are crazy and the press is crazy and all those things. But it's also not going to be 100% for him to walk into the team and just start taking minutes. Now, the thing, I bring up West Ham because they have a crisis at striker. They did get Jared Bowen back, so that's one option for Graham Potter. But they still have other players who are missing. But when those players are healthy again, what is Ricardo Pepi's status? He would have to walk into the team, start scoring goals immediately. So it is a difficult spot for him to be in. But I think he absolutely deserves an opportunity to go be a number one striker, because every single time he's on the field, he scores a goal.
Moving on to long ball number 2 here on Monday. We'll shift our focus. We'll stay with Americans abroad, but move to the UK-based American players. Headline matchup of the weekend was Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest, 2 of the surprise teams, 2 of the informed teams in the Premier League, and Tyler Adams was at the front and center of this, playing a top game for the winners, who ended up blowing out Nottingham Forest 4-5-0. Tyler Adams, 2 assists, played the full game, looked excellent. You said the coach for Bournemouth has played his cards just right, and this continues as Adams not only is getting into the team, he's a standout in the team now.
Yeah, look, he got an assist. I believe that was
the first one.
Was it the first goal? The first goal from Kluivert in the 9th minute. He gets an assist. I don't know if
80 yards down the field.
I don't know if a pass in your own half can count as an assist when you just give the ball to Kluivert and he dribbles the entire Nottingham Forest defense and scores. But whatever. That's what Tyler Adams is supposed to do, right? He's supposed to be excellent in recoveries, excellent defensively, and he's supposed to be decent enough moving the ball forward that we can say, all right, what we've got here is a talented, a top level. Like, okay, I don't want to get into the debate about world class. Okay, I'm over the world class debate for the most part. Tyler Adams is not a world class midfielder because he doesn't have the next level passing ability. But I think it would be silly not to say he's not a world class defensive midfielder in the defensive portion of the game. Like, I think it would be ridiculous to say he's not world class as a defender in that part of the field. And again, if he can be smart about where to get the ball after he recovers it, if he can, then great. That's an extra level. But 100%. Andoni Iraola has played it perfectly. He allowed Tyler Adams to play his way back into fitness. He's allowed him to play his way back into the team as a fixture, as a player that they trust, that the players around him trust, and it's paying dividends for Bournemouth, who I think, despite the season that Nottingham Forest has had, I don't think that this result is unfair in terms of how I view these two teams. I think Bournemouth is a better team than Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest has just been very they've taken advantage of some situations. Obviously, winning away at Anfield is a big thing for them. So they've done some things. Their margins are much narrower, and you can see that Bournemouth under Iraola has continued to grow and grow and grow, and they are a threat for a European place in the Premier League.
Yeah, Tyler Adams getting an 8.9 on FotMob, 2 assists, 23 of 27 passing, 2 chances created, and 45 touches on the ball. Moving into other results, Chris Richards played and possibly injured for Crystal Palace in their loss to Brentford. Your Fulham, unfortunate performance. Anthony Robinson did not create a whole lot, and Fulham lost. And then I don't know if we want to sit on those at all, but I do want to mention Josh Sargent back in the team, back in the score sheet for Norwich.
Yeah, look, it's not a bad thing to have Ricardo Pepi scoring when he comes on as a sub to help PSV Eindhoven win a game in Holland. It's, to have Josh Sargent scoring a brace on, I think, what was his first start back since his surgery. I do think that among U.S. men's national team fans, there is a sense that Josh Sargent isn't good enough, right? That Josh Sargent isn't the level we want for the U.S. men's national team. And I think that's a reasonable take based on what we've seen from him in the national team. I think he hasn't scored in years for the U.S. men's national team, and you can only judge a player on his performances when he shows up for his country. And like whatever he does for Norwich, it's nice, but it doesn't mean he's going to score a bunch of goals in the United States if Mauricio Pochettino decides to give him opportunities. But I don't think you want it to be that nobody, like Josh Sargent is not doing well at Norwich. You want there to be options that are in form. So again, if you're not sure that Sargent can do it for the U.S. men's national team, that's fine. Maybe Pepi is your starter. But again, Pepi's not playing consistent minutes. So if there is any issue at all, or if Pepi gets hurt, or there's some, again, where is Folarin Balogun in our power rankings right now as at striker for the U.S. men's national team?
It's kind of wild because people were losing their minds when he first declared for the United States, and yeah, he is not really sniffing that starting lineup, is he?
It is that thing where maybe we overrated him because he was a dual national and because it was we really really want him to choose us, pick us, validate us, and then he did. And I was like, oh, he's going to be great, and there was some heat around Balogun coming out of Arsenal, and he wanted to play. They didn't really have a spot for him, and they sell him to Monaco, and it just, again, injuries have been part of the story for Balogun, which is not necessarily his fault, but it's been tough, right? It's been tough watching that not come to fruition. So if we don't have Balogun scoring goals, well, it'd be nice to have other players doing things that kind of force them into the conversation. And again, you may not be convinced about Sargent, but it should never be we don't want that player to be having good performances at his club level. And so for Sargent to score 2 good goals for Norwich in this game in the championship is a nice bit of information going into March and going into the rest of 2025.
Other quick notes in England. Aidan Morris returned from injury, played 90 minutes in Middlesbrough, lost to Preston North End. Brendan Aronson and Leeds play
Let me say something about Aidan Morris. That is good news for Aidan Morris, who was on a good run at Middlesbrough in his first season before he got hurt. And with Luca de la Torre deciding to go to Major League Soccer to play for San Diego, I'm not saying that he's out of the picture. And Pochettino has been clear that he still has an open door policy to MLS players, that he's not just dismissing MLS players. But I think a lot of people are going to demote Luca de la Torre. And he wasn't playing at Celta Vigo, so that's another thing, right? If you're not playing, you can't even be in the picture. But if you are playing and you're playing in Major League Soccer, it gets a little bit tougher to know where you fit. But if he's now in Major League Soccer, I think that probably helps Aiden Morris maybe in his quest to be in that picture in that area of the field. Although there's sort of this imperfect group behind Tyler Adams that nobody's quite there defensively like Tyler, and then there are the guys that maybe are pretty good defensively, don't bring the passing level, or they're like Luka where the passing level is very good but the defensive element is not as strong. So and I can throw Gianluca Busio into this conversation. So there's a lot of that in the midfield for the US right now.
Maybe with all their pieces combined, they can make like a transformer midfielder with all their best talents and combine them all together. There.
Voltron. You mean Voltron. Make sure that you get the right reference in there.
Yeah, Voltron at the number 6, please. Moving on to long ball number 3. We are getting to the MLS stuff here in a second, but staying in England for the moment. Long ball number 3, Naomi Girma. Record-breaking transfer arrived in London and was received to warm applause at Stamford Bridge at Chelsea women's game over the weekend. This is the third time Chelsea have broken the transfer record for a female player on that side. Should we check out some of the official? They're rolling out the red carpet for the record-breaking American signing.
Yeah, let's see the video that Chelsea put out on socials for Naomi Girma.
Ooh.
You like the vibes? You like the
intensity?
I mean, that is very English.
Yeah, that is
drum and bass. Yeah,
some garage stuff here.
Yeah, drum and bass. I think is that people who know this kind of music will be able to tell me. I think it's drum and bass. I used to listen to Ronnie Size back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty nice thing to have a player celebrated at that level. Like, again, I think I want to keep this in perspective. We need to get to a place where we're not talking about 1 million. We're talking about 10 and 20 and 50 and 100. And like, that would be nice, right? That would be an indication that the women's game is getting the respect and the attention that it deserves. But before we get to all of that, we have to, before you can walk, you have to crawl. Before you can, all those things. So Naomi Girma getting a proper introduction, a la some of the biggest players on the planet at a club like Chelsea, is very cool. Very, very cool. And I know we've talked a little bit about the talent drain part of this. Like, is this a problem for NWSL that one of their top players is going to England for $1.1 million? But I still think we haven't quite worked out where that balance is going to be between the NWSL and Europe. And there are some things that are definitely going to draw particularly American players to Europe who've never played there. But I think we can just say, Rob, like that was very cool.
Yeah, that's a very cool moment. And for her, I mean, I bet she's probably pretty nervous. She doesn't probably know what to expect. Are the Chelsea fans going to know who she is? Are they that tuned into the game globally to know who this American player is? And clearly, their reception was warm. Chelsea rolls out the blue or red carpet, so to speak, for her. And for context, Chelsea women's are leading the WSL. They've got a 7-point lead after 12 games, so they are adding strength from a position of strength. And I kind of tuned in when I saw this announcement. I kind of tuned in to see what the chatter was on that side of the pond, and most of it is, this is great to see from Chelsea women's because it seems like Chelsea men's have always had a blank check for players. And,
sure.
There's, you're into the double figure millions of dollars. Transfer fees for men's players who just sit on the bench, who don't even see the field at all. And it also, a lot of the conversation turned into how respectful and genuinely excited and enthused the club seems compared to how Sir Jim Radcliffe up in Manchester has, almost gone out of his way to insult the women's team and the women's game. So it's kind of this is a good story just on multiple levels here in WSL.
Yeah, I think that, it's easy to look good by comparison when Jim Ratcliffe trips over
low
his
bar.
his nonsense about the women's team at Manchester United. Yeah, it's a low bar. Hopefully that's not directing the decision making at other clubs. Like, as long as we do a little bit, we can look better than Manchester United and Jim Ratcliffe. No, it should be, let's invest in this. And look, let's not be naive. Business is part of this, right? The business element is part of this. That's what led Jim Ratcliffe to say an incredibly stupid, sexist thing. And I think he's missing the forest for the trees. But let's be real that people make decisions at the club level based on things like how much revenue are we pulling in or how much are we spending versus how much we're making. And yes, I totally 100% believe that the women's game is not being given the same level of care and interest and credit as the men's game. People are willing to drop hundreds of millions of dollars out ahead of any revenue, out ahead of any income on the men's game because, we think we're going to get it. But the women's game isn't worth that investment. That's nonsense, right? Let's put that money in because until we do, we don't know what the women's game can totally return. And we don't know what level of interest there can possibly be if we're only just taking baby steps on treating it seriously, right? This is something Major League Soccer had to learn on the men's side. The more professional you look, the more money you're spending, the signal it sends to the fans is this is important. This matters. You should care about this because look at what we're putting into it. So you have to send that message on the women's side. And I wanted to bring this in because you mentioned Chelsea having a blank check when it comes to the men's game. The Deloitte Football Money League report came out last week. Rob, I don't know if you know what this is. This is the annual report on the business, basically, of football.
The spending leaders?
Yeah, it's the revenue leaders. So Real Madrid broke a billion euros. Real Madrid broke this season. They're the first team ever to bring in €1 billion in a season. So we have the top 20. Chelsea is number 10 at 545.5 million euros of revenue. Okay, it's number 10 behind Spurs, by the way, which is fascinating. But they finished number 10 in the Deloitte Money League. And if you go down on the webpage for the Deloitte Money League, you can find their revenue, their change from last year. They're down 7%. You can see what elements make up their revenue. So, for example, commercial revenue is 262 million euros. Match day revenue is 93 million euros. Broadcasting is 190 million euros. Okay, so it tells you where this money comes from. It also has the women's team revenue. It shows you what the women's team is bringing in. And according to Deloitte, Chelsea's women's team brought in 2024, this is the report for 2024, 13.4 million euros. 13.4 million euros, which is first in the Women's Super League. That was their performance in the league. They finished first in the league, and they brought in 13 million euros. So, and their commercial revenue and broadcasting, a fraction of the men's team, like a tiny fraction. The men's team brought 190 million euros in through broadcasting revenue. Chelsea's women's team, 2 million euros. That's it. So again, this is like, okay, you have to keep it in context. Would we love it if Chelsea was forced to pay $10 million for Naomi Girma, or 20 million, or 30, or 40? Absolutely. But when the women's team, right, and I'll let you decide whether it's right for them to separate it, to treat it this way, or should they be taking revenue from one side and spending it on the other to prop up the women's team so we can get to that place of it's serious, it matters, care about it, more revenue comes in, justifies the spend. But when they have $13 million or 13 million euros of revenue and they spend $1 million on a player, it tells you like they're making a significant commitment relative to what the club brings in. So that's nice.
It's just generally an interesting moment for the women's game. Like there isn't one but the whole talent drain from NWSL to WSL. I mean, like I pointed out last week, there isn't one clear league that's just 100 years ahead of the other, like in the men's side. Like, there will be almost no chance of newer leagues like MLSs of the world really genuinely ever catching up that history. That's just impossible. Yeah. So it's interesting to see these teams or these leagues at somewhat of a more level footing, and maybe it'll go back and forth for a while to see who's the has the top magnetism, which pro league is the best professional league, and where we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it a little bit recently. That you're right about the league faction of a portion of this factor in this, but the history, the men's history gets attached to the women's team because they wear the same badge, right? Because because it's all wrapped up under the same umbrella. So, and there's, of course, UEFA organizing women's football in Europe, and there's a UEFA Champions League. And so even if you can say the Super League or the French League or the German League or whatever is not out ahead, the Spanish League is not out ahead of NWSL historically or in terms of quality, what you can say is playing for Chelsea or playing for Barcelona or playing for Lyon gives you access to things that are important on the men's side, and then that trickles over to the women's side, which is going to be tough for NWSL to compete with. They don't have a Champions League. What we're hoping for, and Nicholas Murray has said this in other places, so shout out to him who's in the chat today. FIFA needs to, or maybe that was John Tannenwald who said it to me. Sorry, Nicholas. FIFA needs to do something about this and maybe put together the Club World Cup on the women's side that would feel more important than it does on the men's side. On the men's side, it feels like you're throwing that on top of something that's already there. Yeah. Right? It doesn't feel like something we really need. On the women's side, we probably need it.
Yeah, that would be exciting to see. If you haven't already, click subscribe to the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. We are on the warpath towards 1,000 subscribers. Morning Kickaround, 2 words on YouTube. And check us out. Follow along at mkickaround on social media platforms, X, Instagram, and the Blue Sky. And then check out our brand new Ko-Fi account. You can donate a coffee or even a monthly donation. Visit us at kofi.com/morningkickaround. All right, let's take a breath, come right back, and catch up on our MLS offseason in Hot Topic here in just one sec. Sizzling Hot Topic here for Monday, January 27th. Can you believe it? Less than a month till MLS opening weekend in February 22nd. And offseason has been busy. The internet has been going wild. Transfers in, transfers out. What tops the list for the MLS transaction update for you, Mr. Davis?
Well, okay, I got some visual aids here. I'd like to bring visual aids to the show since we are here on YouTube. This is from Transfer Market. These are the official moves that I picked out that are done that I think are worth mentioning. And again, so things are moving so quickly, and this is such a busy offseason that there's some sort of there are a lot of fundamental changes happening at clubs, in terms of the makeup of their teams, starting lineups even. Federico Navarro leaves Chicago. This is just part of the Chicago Fire overhaul that is happening right now under Greg Berhalter. We have seen, those rumors of kicking the tires on a Neymar deal. Not going to happen. Looks like he's going back to Santos in Brazil, and you didn't want him anyway. And I do think, it's interesting that we had a report about Mansueto and Berhalter flying to Saudi Arabia to have conversations with Neymar's people. Robert?
I just got to say, what's their depth chart for gets? Like, it's Neymar and then a guy from like the third division in Lithuania. Like, what's the second option behind Neymar there?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, again, you follow your local independent media outlet, journalistic outlet that's covering MLS. Check out the podcast. Those people have a very clear idea of what the depth charts look like right now. And, for Chicago, again, this is a rebuild of a rebuild in a sense that I don't even know if it's the right word. Rebuild implies that you had something good to begin with, and then it was like it kind of didn't do very well, and then you had to rebuild it, or it got old, and they were never good to begin with. Like, it's been so long since the Fire mattered that you're not really rebuilding. You're going from scratch at this point, right? So, I mean, look, we just saw Brian Gutierrez in the U.S. men's national team camp. He's a player I think a lot of Chicago fans are hoping to see a big season from. They still have Hugo Kuipers up top, I believe, to score their goals. Kellen Acosta in the midfield. We'll see. Navarro goes out, right? There is Jack Elliott joined from Philadelphia, so they added him in the defense. He said he wants to be part of that project, I think is the word that he used. So there's some
always trouble when you say project.
But that's always a word that kind of should ring a warning bell, just because it does feel like, You know?
It may or may not work, but we're going to give it a try.
Right. You've got Jonathan Bamba, who has joined Chicago this season from I believe he was playing in France. He was playing in Celta Vigo, so he arrives from Celta Vigo to join the Fire. Had played in Liga for a number of years. 28-year-old winger, so they're going to add him and hope he is a significant addition on the attack. So that's Chicago. Again, Navarro's out. That's just clearing some room. Elijah Winder is on this list. That's an interesting one, and one I know Nicholas Murray in our chat is intrigued by because he goes from Louisville City of the USL Championship to the LA Galaxy for 380,000 euros. The transfer market uses euros, but obviously it's basically one for one. I've seen it argued that's paying too much for him, but I think he's 21 years old. His brother, by the way, is in Europe already. So, this is obviously a talented family. Joshua Winder has already made the jump to Europe. I think the Galaxy are being smart, trying to get in on a young player that they see some potential in. Carlos Gruezo leaves San Jose. This is, again, part of Bruce Arena's project there in San Jose. And the San Jose Earthquakes, Rob, have you been paying attention to what Bruce has been doing, what he's been up to over there in San Jose, trying to make the Quakes matter again?
Yeah, I've seen. There's definitely been some incomings there. They got the late stage Mr. Martinez, Joseph Martinez in there, and there's been a couple, somewhat notable, project type acquisitions for San Jose. And going just back to the Fire for a second, I think it's kind of amusing that Andrew Gutman came in from Colorado, who was like a U23 player that fans wanted them to sign like 8 years ago, and he's now meandered his way back to the Fire after being he could have been like a homegrown signing for them. So I thought that was just kind of gave me a comical smirk that they eventually, that's the rebuild. They got the guy from their own academy 8 years later. That's part of the rebuild there in Chicago.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so you wanted to mention Chicago. I want to go back to San Jose in a second, but I will also point out, as Nicholas Murray is giving us facts as he is wont to do, and he does a great job with it, Elijah Winder is the third USL Championship Young Player of the Year in the past 4 years to be transferred to Europe or MLS. I've already mentioned Josh Winder, his brother, who's at Benfica now. I should say what I like about that move, too, is that the pipeline between USL and MLS has not been good enough. MLS hasn't done a good enough job identifying talent out of the USL Championship and bringing them up. And it's always good when American teams are paying other American teams for their players. Right, this is a market that has to open up, and so cash flowing from the LA Galaxy to Louisville City is a good sign for the future of that pipeline. So Gruezo, who was a DP at one point, he's gone. I think he was here, he left and went to Germany, came back, San Jose, now he's gone. Mateusz Bogus going to Cruz Azul for something like $9 million is a pretty interesting deal too.
Yeah, that's a low-key big one, I think.
Yeah, I loved Bogus as a player. Now, LAFC has shown a propensity for being able to find players like this, like Bogusz, whether they're South American or European. So this is an interesting one. It's an out, but LAFC, I think, is in a good place to replace him. So Emerson Rodriguez getting sold to Ludogorets. Miami making some room and bringing some more money in. Patrick Weah going from Minnesota to Atlanta United 2. That's only interesting. The only reason I included this is because I think there was this thought a while back. Patrick Weah was related to Timothy Weah, but I don't think there is any relation there. I think that was all kind of like he didn't deny it, and somebody took it as possible. But anyway, he hasn't done a lot yet. He's 21. He's still got some growth, but there. Dante Van Zier. That's a player who had some decent moments in MLS. Obviously, some highly controversial moments in MLS. That opens up a DP slot, if I'm not mistaken, with the New York Red Bulls, and they have been already sort of fascinating this season. They signed Choupo-Moting.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
What do you make of that? Because that's not an obvious sort of back end of his career guy I would think a team would be interested in Major League Soccer.
No, because he's kind of been a mercurial character anyway. He's bounced around. He was at the Stokes and a few different other continental places, and then kind of was the fill-in-the-blank forward for them when Bayern Munich was in transition. popped up in spots and then kind of got replaced by Kane. And then of all the players, New York Red Bulls, they've been so shy. I don't know if shy are apprehensive at laying out the money for any sort of like star players, and they haven't really brought in a lot. I mean, obviously they got Forsberg last year that had mixed results, and then if you're going to lay out the money, this is not the player that we speculated. We kind of joshed a little bit about Mo Salah being that guy they should maybe splash some cash for with the Klopp and Red Bull connection. But Choupo-Moting, not the player that, is anyone going to like, oh, they got Choupo-Moting? Let's go down to the Red Bull Arena and go check out a game. I haven't been there in years. I think I'll get into traffic and head on down to New Jersey for a Choupo-Moting experience to tell my kids I saw him.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know what his, what is
the appeal? What is the appeal?
Just that he scored some goals, I guess. That he was available, that he was on a free transfer, and that they hope he can score some goals.
With it being a free transfer, I guess it's taking a flyer. Maybe his experience, and he can coach up some players within the locker room. Perhaps he's very positive in the locker room. I don't know. Sure. Maybe it's like we didn't have to lay out a bunch of money. Still has a little bit of life in his legs. Maybe he can net a couple for us where we didn't.
Yeah, perhaps. All right, I got a couple more. Let's go. Karol Swiderski leaving Charlotte opens up an EP slot for them. Of course, they made the Wilfried Zaha move, and we're hoping that Patrick Agyemang gets a lot of time to score the goals that we saw with the U.S. men's national team, and he can build on his career. Swiderski had some moments in Charlotte. It was always kind of like dicey whether he was really there or not. They've had a couple of Polish players come through there. So he leaves. Alan Velasco sold by Dallas, part of their rebuild, their overhaul. I'm still kind of trying to catch up on what FC Dallas is trying to do. I like the signing of Eric Quill as their head coach, a guy who had some success in the USL Championship and has some connections to FC Dallas through his time there as a coach. But I again, in terms of their roster and what they're doing, they traded Paul Arriola and Jesus Ferreira to Seattle, as Seattle kind of add some pieces with multiple fronts to fight on this year. Dallas added Anderson Julio, a 21-year-old winger or 28-year-old winger rather, who was at Real Salt Lake, who had was a decent player at Real Salt Lake. They added a player called Show, SHOW, a player called Show. I don't know what to expect out of Show. He's a defensive midfielder who arrives from Maccabi Haifa. But I just wanted to mention the name. How can you go wrong with a name like Show?
What's his first name? Billy Show? And that's the funniest name since PC, or unique name since PC.
You, he's Angolan. His name is just Show. He's Angolan, and because he's Angolan, he's got a Portuguese style name. So this is kind of like that thing that the Portuguese tend to do, where they just give you one nickname and that's who you are. So it's just little Brazilian shirt name kind of vibes for Show, I think.
That's cool.
But he better be good with a name like Show. Like he better back up the name is all I'm going to say about him. All right. So you see here, Velasco goes, Nkosi Tafari leaves Dallas. Again, Dallas player leaving to go to LAFC. That's an interesting bit of depth, perhaps. I think he'll play a significant amount, LAFC. Leon Flack leaving Philadelphia. I would love to hear what Philadelphia fans think about that. Him leaving. They've had Jack Elliott left. There's been some changes. Obviously, a new head coach and Bradley Carnell. Timo Pukki, who had some nice moments in Minnesota, he leaves to go back to Finland, his native country.
I was surprised Pukki only tallied up 14 goals in total in 2 seasons. I thought he had a little bit more than that.
No, it didn't have. I think he got hurt. It just had one of some poor runs. And then Yaya Boa, who I've liked a lot in Columbus, ended up at LAFC. And here's some insight again. This is what we get from our fans. Mike Thomas, Union fan. Apparently, Flock left for personal reasons to be closer to Germany because he left Germany, but he didn't go to Germany, or he left MLS but didn't go to Germany. Anyway, Yaya Boa, I believe there was a trade involved here, rights of first refusal, because I think he was released by Columbus or he hit the waiver wire. It's one of those MLS things that's really hard to kind of. What's going on here? What's the mechanism for Yaya Boa ending up in LAFC and then at LAFC and then LAFC having to trade some assets they sent $50,000 to San Diego in general allocation money in order to sign Yeboah, because apparently San Diego picked him in the reentry draft. That's what it was. So Yeboah was reentry draft claimed by San Diego, and LAFC wanted to sign him, so they had to send $50,000 to San Diego. There's that. Over at Gimme Sport, and obviously you guys are watching. You're watching Tom Bogert and David Gass on Soccer Wise. Shout out to them. And I'm sure Tom's going through all this stuff. But I just some of the rumors and things that are flowing around right now. Cincinnati getting closer to a couple signings, according to Tom. They've got Lucas Engel, wingback from Middlesbrough. We know how they love their wingbacks in Cincinnati. Vancouver signing Jaden Nelson, who had from Rosenborg. He had been with Toronto, and I remember him having some nice moments with Toronto. So coming back to MLS, but joining Vancouver this time around. There you go, Timbers, who I think have been pretty quiet this offseason. They might be bringing in a left back. Chicago signed, again, part of the Chicago rebuild here. Midfielder Romanique Kouami from Cadiz. So there's that. Minnesota too as well. So the off season has been very, very busy in Major League Soccer, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. So I'm fascinated to see how this season, because this looks to me like MLS flexing some international muscle as a destination. Maybe not for the top level players, obviously, but for a different tier of players than they've had in the past.
Yeah, it seems wild just looking at that huge list of the incoming, outgoing that, 10, 15 years ago, MLS didn't even interact with the world. It was an isolationist league. And to see, you could scroll and scroll and scroll through these offseason transfers. Dallas emptying the cupboard, a couple interesting players coming into San Jose, Charlotte, and others. Definitely interesting developments. We'll see what happens in MLS 2025, only 3 weeks away from kickoff for the brand new Major League Soccer season. If you haven't already, give us a follow, a subscribe, the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. We're on the march to 1,000 subscribers, so why don't you be the next? Help us support. Become the town center for the American soccer conversation. And do that and follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And chip in financially if you'd like to. Buy us a coffee or a monthly donation. Do that at Ko-Fi /Morning Kickaround. All right, we'll move on. Segment 3. We'll dip into today's culture wars here on Morning Kickaround. Here on Monday, January 27th, the soccer trial of the century, shall we say, NASL versus MLS and USSF. We're a couple weeks in. We had a couple of videos with Stephen Bank talking about, what each side has to prove here. There was testimonies last week, Galati and Garber. There was also stars like Carmelo Anthony took the stand and testified about the losses he took. But one of the interesting notes, one of the articles in The Athletic was Carmelo Anthony's testimony last week might have actually narrowed the amount that could potentially be won by NASL. The judge in this case didn't seem too impressed by an owner being brought up to the stand, because the case is a league complaint. The antitrust suit is league versus league and a governing body. But they had Carmelo Anthony, former or owner of Puerto Rico's franchise in the NASL that went debunked after a hurricane, and in the non-sanctioning, he complained about losing lots on this deal, but might have backfired because the judge afterwards said, I'm not sure why they brought an owner up, because these are supposed to be about league losses, and he was complaining about personal losses as an owner. So interesting developments in a trial that might go on for a while.
Yeah, look, the I think like, well, obviously what U.S. Soccer and MLS, if you are siding with NASL, what they did hurt Carmelo Anthony's ability to recover maybe from what happened with Maria, what happened with Puerto Rico FC. I will say just a little bit of insight, and I don't recall exactly how I felt at the time, but I went and met with Tom Payne, who was the man charged with running the Puerto Rico FC operation in Puerto Rico. Tom Payne, brother of Kevin Payne, former president of the LA Galaxy, Tom Payne, as well.
Cousin of T-Pain?
No, not related to T-Pain, I don't think. I'll check on that.
Okay.
We can check on that, but I'm pretty sure not related to T-Pain. So I was, my wife is Puerto Rican. I was in Puerto Rico. I knew about this club launching. Carmelo Anthony is owner. I was very intrigued. I wrangled a meeting with Tom Payne just to talk. I was sort of in a journalistic exercise. I wasn't going to try to get a job. I just wanted to know what was going on. And we had a nice chat. I actually went out to tryouts. I went out to the open tryouts that they were doing as they were putting the team together and talked to some of the guys in the stands. And then, lots of them Americans who had played college, who were just, who were told that by their agent that it was an opportunity to maybe play in a professional league, in a professional team in Puerto Rico. And it looked like they might have some momentum. Now, I am not an expert, despite the fact my wife is Puerto Rican and I spent a lot of time there. I'm not an expert on the place of soccer in Puerto Rican culture. I can only tell you what my observations are when I go. There are lots of jerseys on little kids, on young people. There is certainly the same kind of vibe that there is in a lot of American cities where it's not, you turn on your local sports talk radio station and you're probably not hearing a lot of soccer. They're not really breaking stuff down, right? They're not talking MLS. They're not talking Champions League. It's not really making it, right? Especially during the NFL season as we head to the Super Bowl. But there is obviously a sort of a subculture where there are lots of people who care about soccer in any given metropolitan area, in any given city. And Puerto Rico's like that, right? But it never felt like it was guaranteed. And they had a team that lived and died in the Puerto Rico Islanders, who played in, I guess it was the old A-League, USL before the split. I'm trying to remember the timelines here because, of course, NASL was born out of a split with other USL owners. So this is what makes it complicated. I'm just saying what I'm trying to get to here is that it was always going to be a tough lift for professional soccer in Puerto Rico, just like it is in many American places. And Carmelo Anthony going up on the stand and saying, I lost a bunch of money and I couldn't come back from the hurricane, absolutely does seem like a ridiculous thing to put in front of the jury when what you're saying is we didn't get to compete because USSF and MLS screwed us. How does anything that Carmelo Anthony says about how difficult it was to run a soccer club in Puerto Rico relate to the way U.S. Soccer or MLS handled the situation? We don't have a lot of reports on what Galati said or what Garber said. I'm also reading that Clark Hunt, whose family owns FC Dallas, whose dad was one of the original MLS investors, whose name is on an MLS trophy. The MLS Cup trophy is the Lamar Hunt trophy, right? Is that right? Oh, no, the Open Cup trophy. Excuse me. The Open Cup trophy is the Lamar Hunt trophy. Clark Hunt, owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, who have some stuff going on, if you didn't know, was on the stand last week ahead of the AFC Championship game talking about this. A quote I can pull out of this story from Meli Anzadai over at The Athletic is, they were frankly never really on my radar. I was not aware of them. And he's talking about the NASL. He's saying, we are eagles and they are flies and we did not care about them, is what he's saying. I don't think he said it with that kind of all right, tone, but
did he sneer? I mean, did he sneer with it? It's almost like I didn't notice what I stepped on under my shoe. Why would we bend over to wipe the shoe if I didn't even know if I had anything on the bottom of my shoe?
Maybe. It says Hunt's 40-minute testimony dove into his family's sports empire, talks about Lamar Hunt, how he founded the AFL. That's interesting in the context of the NASL, right? Because the NASL at a point when Rocco bought the Cosmos and when they decided to go kind of all in on challenging MLS or wanting to be a first division league, I'm not saying the idea was let's do what the AFL did and one day merge with Major League Soccer, but that is a path that has been followed by professional sports organizations, leagues that have challenged the established league in the past, ABA, AFL. These things have worked in that regard. And I imagine that this was part of it, that, hey, your dad started a league and then that league merged with the NFL. You kind of should be on the side of the NASL in this thing, right? Like you should see the opportunity here that competition can sometimes make stuff better. And I'd be curious to know how that played with the jury. Clark said, in terms of his dad, he still believed the sport of soccer had a very bright future in the United States. As after Lamar Hunt was encouraged to invest in MLS after he had been part of the NASL 1.0 and that had collapsed. He said his father made the phone calls to Phil Anschutz and Robert Kraft and all the billionaires. So, again, without Lamar Hunt, then we probably don't have Major League Soccer. Case resumes today. Rocco Commisso is expected to take the stand today, Rob. And I imagine we will get some fireworks out of that. I don't know if he's on the stand right now as we speak. I wish we had some way to know what was going on in that courtroom. And I think it's in Brooklyn, right? I really, really wish I knew.
Yeah, this is where if we were overseas, there would be, 24-hour news choppers following like a chopper, like, oh, here comes Rocco Commisso walking into the courthouse in Manhattan. But we don't have that. We do have some athletic reporters covering it and some others, such as Stephen Bank and other guests we've had to talk about this. But we don't have up-to-the-minute reporting on this, unfortunately. But Rocco Commisso, who is probably, I don't think it's confirmed, but is probably paying for the entirety of this legal case on behalf of NASL. He owns teams abroad. He's back over here. He never dropped the suit. I mean, is Commisso stubborn, or like what is his benefit to keeping this case going at great expense for nearly a decade, do you think?
Well, go back and watch the interview I did with Stephen Bank. And Stephen's opinion, I think it's a reasonable read, but I think it is opinion ultimately, is that this is just very wealthy, powerful people arguing over who gets to be in charge. That's basically what this is. Like, Rocco thinks his idea of how soccer should work is better than the U.S. soccer idea of how soccer should work, or the MLS idea of how soccer should work, or the other billionaires, the other extremely wealthy people like Kraft, like Anschutz, like the Hunts, like, name your billionaire that's involved in soccer in America. Rocco thinks his idea is better. And so this is why I am not emotionally invested in this, in the sense that, I think you could very easily draw a line with a simple reading and say it's the big establishment of U.S. soccer and MLS versus the little guy in the NASL, the upstart league that's there for the people. Like, you could twist a narrative to see this lawsuit as David versus Goliath. It ain't that. It's not David versus Goliath, right? It's Goliath versus Goliath, with the caveat that the clubs and the teams that are attached to one of those, in this case Rocco Commisso, we're not the established teams, right? We're not the teams that had launched in '96 and put in restrictions on spending and done single entity and prevented any idea of promotion and relegation by being a closed league and all of those things. And I'm not sure the NASL ever would have gotten to those places. But they love to talk about them, right? They love to talk about challenging MLS. They love to talk about Pro Rel. They love to because it was free, because it cost them nothing to talk about those things as a way to set themselves up in opposition to MLS.
You're saying that if Rocco Commisso and NASL were given the brevity to do what they wanted to do, they might not be doing anything necessarily any different than MLS?
I find it difficult to believe that when the pressures of operating a soccer league in America would come down on them, that they would suddenly be like, you know what the best thing for the game is? Let's just open everything up. Let's do Pro Rel. Let's not have franchise area rights. Like, I don't know, right? Because, we only have MLS and USL. Both of those leagues operate to their own self-benefit without any notion of working together. Why would the NASL be any different? Like, why do we imagine, after so many years, going back a century in this country, of leagues coming and going because the people in charge ultimately cared about their bottom line, or ultimately cared about their investment over the sort of, romantic notion of what we want soccer to be in this country? Why would it be different with NASL? I don't think it would. I am here and I am willing to listen to an argument that the way soccer is governed in America is wrong or broken or needs to be fixed in some way. But I do want to be sure that we're all very clear-eyed about the ideas of if that came to pass. Let's say Rocco wins the lawsuit and is awarded a ton of money. I think $500 million is the cap on this right now. If he's awarded the full $500 million, what would it do? What good would it do in American soccer? Do you see any good coming out of it? Show me where that good might be, and I will listen. Maybe I'm not seeing it.
Well, perhaps it would just maybe make any sort of possible future abuse, maybe think twice that there are people looking over their shoulders. Maybe it might make some concessions or something like that of how they operate. I mean, SUM, the Sports United Marketing, has been unraveled since this lawsuit came up.
That is true. That is true. And again, go back and listen to the interview with Stephen Begg ahead of the trial, or as it was beginning, because he does nothing has changed through the trial as to what Stephen Begg was talking about and what was at stake. And he said, yeah, like he would have advised MLS to divest Soccer United Marketing before they did it, but ultimately they did do it. And yet, yes, you could argue it came out of the threat that this case posed. I suppose that is one place to go. But again, what's at stake here is kind of different than the question. The question is very narrow, and it's not clear. There's a lot of gray area here, right? And that's something that Stephen said as well. It's not like what MLS did was conspire. Okay, it's difficult to prove they conspired against the league rather than just sort of operated in a way that was sort of normal business, right? Like it's difficult to prove that U.S. Soccer and MLS got together and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to conspire to crush the NASL. Like, there are no evil actors of that level. This is not a Bond movie. There's no person in a volcano lair stroking a white cat cackling over ending an upstart soccer league's life. That's not what happened here. So again, it's a legal question. It gets kind of boring and bogged down, and who knows what the result will be. But it's I'm still interested to see what happens here.
I feel like you just verbally designed the thumbnail for this video. It's Don Garber stroking a white cat. Is the conspiracy in for MLS versus NASL? More on Morning Kickaround, and we shall see. I'm interested to see what the news comes out with Rocco Camiso. Not the perfect messenger, but we shall see how this all plays out. What updates we have from the soccer trial. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and if you haven't already, click subscribe on the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. We are on the march to 1,000 YouTube subscribers. So thank you everyone who's done so already, and continue to spread the word. The show only grows with you guys in the audience. Contact us and follow along on social media. Kickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Write us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And brand new to the show, we have a Ko-Fi account. If you can support us, you can buy us a coffee or make a monthly donation. Ko-fi.com/morningkickaround to do so. All right. We'll have much more coming up. We'll see you on Wednesday. Your morning's been kicked. Until then, enjoy your soccer.